The Pacers get destroyed again, giving up 130 points again to the Atlanta Hawks in a loss at home. Plus, Myles Turner's season is over. Justin Anderson officially re-signed a second 10-day deal. Busy day on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And today, we are talking Pacers, Hawks. We're talking Myles Turner's season is over. We're talking Justin Anderson signing. Lots to get through today as the Pacers get smoked again. They are not going for wins at this point in the season. Hawks win, score 130 points again. It's the third consecutive Pacers opponent to score 130 points in a row. Wow, does the Pacers defense look terrible. On a related note, Myles Turner is out for the season. He will not play again this season, as sort of expected, but not necessarily 100% expected, and I'll explain why. In the second segment at the end, Justin Anderson is back on another 10-day deal. Pacers re-signed him today. I'll explain why, what they did it, what it could mean for the next 10 days, and for Justin Anderson's future. But we always, on Locked On Pacers, start with the games. That is why we all love the NBA and the Pacers. Of course, after all, Pacers lose to the Hawks 123-132. 9-point loss looks kind of close. It was not that close. Hawks were in control the whole way. I think the closest it got was maybe 6 points in the third quarter at one point. Pacers were looking pretty decent in that quarter, but in general, the Hawks were in control the whole time. Trae Young looked unbelievable. Really, that whole team looked really good shooting the ball, and the Pacers were trapping on defense quite a bit to try to get the ball out of Trae Young's hands, which seems like a good strategy, right? Kiefer Sykes, we'll get to why he started in a second, which actually worked out really well for the Pacers, but defended Trae Young pretty well. Trae Young, 14 points, only shot the ball 13 times and missed a bunch. 2 for 9 from deep. He had 16 assists, though, and that's where the traps were not the thing for the Pacers, right? Their defensive scheme was obviously put a lot of pressure on Hawks ball handlers, trap them, get the ball out of their hands. Trae Young tore it up, 16 assists, even though he only had 14 points. Clint Capella was a good receptor of that. He was diving to the basket and got 22 points off that. Kevin Huerter was cutting for open threes. He had 22 points and hit 6 triples. Right, a bunch of guys who don't normally have huge games for the Hawks went off. And then also Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's normally the Hawks secondary creator, was a big benefactor of Trae getting trapped. And he ended up scoring 29. And he himself was getting trapped at some points in the second half. He also got the ball out of his hands and helped the Hawks just clean up the Pacers with ease. The trap was a good idea, I think. They did a good job shutting down Trae. The Pacers did. He had 47 against the Pacers earlier this year. But in this game, he killed them with the assist, 16. A very impressive game from him. So the Pacers, 8 guys again. Having 8 guys is really hard for defense. It's very taxing. It's hard to play hard on both ends for a full game when you're playing basically 35 to 40 minutes. It's tough. And their defense has not been good all season. This just adds to it. But something the Pacers did is they had some different guys out this game. Dwayne Washington was out in this one. Goga was back, but they lost O'Shea Brissett. They found out just before the game his sore back would keep him out. So they only had 8 guys again. It was a different 8 guys than they had in Toronto. So they had a new starting spot open with O'Shea out. And Rick Carlisle opts for Kiefer Sykes because of the scrappy defense he could play on Trae Young. Kiefer Sykes played a very nice game. He was a key part of the reason that the Pacers did okay on Young and had a chance in this game. Made life a little hard on him. And again, we're within 6 in the third quarter. They never really had a chance to win, but they were close enough that it felt like at times, they were a couple of threes away from coming back. Kiefer Sykes played great defense, 6 for 9 from the field, 16 points, 4 assists, his best game in a very long time. Kiefer Sykes was very good for the Pacers in his starting role in this game. So that was a very smart move from Carlisle, the tactician. On the other hand, though, they didn't have enough guys for it to really matter, right? The starting 5, Sykes was good. Halliburton had 25 points and 13 assists. He found the right balance of attacking and passing in this game. He has not found that balance in a while. And he said he's been talking with Carlisle a lot about how they find it and how to do certain game plans and stuff. And he's been executing that well. He was very good in this game. Buddy Hield had 26 points, only 15 shots. Those 2 were great. That makes Carlisle look smart for starting 3 guards against the Hawks team. And the rest of the Pacers were not as good. Goga Bitadze, 5 for 11, a little stumbly, 4 fouls. Not his best game. Justin Anderson missed 4 threes, and he's fitting in offensively, but had some weak moments defensively. Lance Stevenson was 3 for 8. Jalen Smith was 4 for 9. They just lost a lot of juice in other places, despite getting a lot out of that 3-guard lineup. And 3-guard lineups continue to be something that Buddy Hield and Tyrese Halliburton thrive in. That showed in this game. But Rick Carlisle's choice to start Kiefer Sykes was really good. That was Kiefer Sykes' best game in a very long time, probably since early January when he was on his initial, well, it's the same contract he was on then, but when his contract was still non-guaranteed and he was fighting for a roster spot, he played excellent this game. Hit 4 threes, 4 assists. Again, the defense on Trae Young was excellent, only 2 turnovers in 34 minutes. Kiefer Sykes was really a key part of the Pacers' operation in this game, and I'll be curious to see how they deploy him the rest of the season because, in general, Kiefer Sykes has kind of struggled in this year. In fact, he's really struggled this year. 34% shooter from the field. His three-point percentage dipped after a hot start. In general, his true shooting percentage is 42.3%. That's really bad. His defense is good. He takes care of the ball to a pretty solid extent. He's a fine backup point guard. He's not, hemorrhaging points or anything like that. His defense is scrappy, but he's had a lot of games where he shoots the ball pretty poorly. And there's, you got to be able to do that if you're going to play the way he does, or you're not like a supercharged setup man or anything. And finally, he's had a couple of games recently shooting 50% against the Spurs earlier this month. Hit both of his shots against Memphis in the home game, and then this game now, where he's kind of rounded into form shooting the ball a little bit. It'll be interesting to see as a team option next year to see if he can carry some of these good performances down the stretch because he's going to keep playing if Dwayne Washington continues to sit with this hip injury. I think that was something noteworthy from this game is that Kiefer Sykes had his best game in, my goodness, definitely since that stretch in early January. I think it was his first double-digit scoring game since February 15th. So good Kiefer Sykes game and good confidence builder for him as he's been really struggling. But the story and a lot of the questions after the game for Carlisle and other players was about Tyrese Halliburton. 25 points, 13 assists, plus 4. They're losing the whole game, but they win Tyrese Halliburton's 40 minutes because he was excellent, canning them deep threes, setting up his teammates again with 13 assists, carving his way into the paint, and he got all the way to the basket a few times, something I've talked about that he needs to be a little bit better at. He was great at that in this game, and he was nailing the pull-up mid-range shots. He was really tough for the Hawks to guard. And hey, Trae Young guarding you will make things look pretty easy sometimes. Trae Young is not a very good defender, but Tyrese Halliburton really exposed a lot of soft points in the Hawks defense with solid offensive play, and he found the right balance of shooting. Now, I don't know that Tyrese Halliburton needs to shoot 19 times every single game. I don't know if that's necessarily the number for him long term when it stabilizes and the Pacers have a fully healthy roster and he figures out the right balance. But I do think, given the games we've seen from him recently, in Toronto he shot 8 times, 7 times, and the game before that against Memphis he shot 9, 14 against the Kings, 8 against Portland, 9 against Houston. That was the 5 games prior to this Hawks team, even 10 against Memphis in the game before that. The last time he shot more, than he shot 15 against Atlanta. That was the last time he shot that volume of 15. It was basically a month ago, 3 weeks ago at this point. So to see him get up 19 in this game, which is his second most, no, that's his most as a Pacer, 19 shots is something the Pacers need to see more of, I think. Even if it's not, again, the number he will ultimately settle at in terms of volume of shots, just getting him more looks and seeing what he's good at and finding the right groove and figuring out what he should be doing on any given possession when he is the aggressor and he's not being passive and looking to pass more often is really important. And him getting up 19 shots, if that's what it takes to figure it out, great, take 19 shots. The season is over and sunken for the Pacers. In fact, this was loss 51 for the Pacers, which to you might mean very little on the surface, but that means the Pacers have clinched their worst record since the 1980s. This is the first time they've lost more than 50 games since 1989. That was also the last time the Pacers picked inside the top 10. So, look, I'm 27 years old. This is the worst Pacers season since I was born. This has been an awful season for the team, and they have 6 games left. And these kind of things, finding Kiefer Sykes a scrappy defensive role where he finds a groove on offense, finding Tyrese Halliburton the right level of aggression to make the team play better, finding the right spots for Buddy Hield to shoot, helping Justin Anderson be a little bit better defender, right? All these things that seem like such minor things when the team is 25 and 51 are pretty important for the Pacers at this current stage, because when you have your worst season in 32 years, I had someone tell me on Twitter after the game, they are 32 years old, and this will be the first time the Pacers have a top 10 pick in their life, right? That is crazy to think about. These kind of little micro things that seem like nothing on a one given night are really important for the Pacers, and seeing Halliburton find a groove and Kiefer Sykes find a groove and Buddy Hield, all those guys click in another 3-guard lineup that the Pacers need to keep pursuing was really important. So Pacers lose, but unlike their last 2 games against Memphis and Toronto, they actually looked competitive in this game. They didn't get completely embarrassed. They didn't lose at the buzzer like against the Hawks. They played just a decently capable game for 3/4 of the action. In fact, The first quarter, the Hawks scored 44 points. The Pacers defense came out extremely flat. And then from that point on, the Pacers actually won the game for the final three quarters. They really played about 40 minutes of solid basketball and 8 minutes of atrocious basketball. So lots to build off of. Finally, a blueprint for success for this team that has been totally floundering for the last couple weeks. And they have 6 more games. They don't care if they win a single one of them, but they will hope that they find more of these little victories where a player finds a little groove or looks good for the first time in a while. Let's move on, because the Pacers defense stunk in this game. They give over 130 points again. And I'll do a whole podcast on their defense at some point. But part of the reason their defense has really struggled recently, they have not had Myles Turner, and it was officially announced by the Pacers that Myles Turner will miss the rest of the season. What does that mean? What does that mean for next season and his free agency? Why is this being announced now? Let's talk about all that. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about 2 awesome groups of people. First up, the good folks over at NBA Top Shot, the official licensed NFT of the NBA. Connect with a passionate community of NBA fans across the globe and build your collection with your favorite moments from NBA history. NBA Top Shot is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading cards, part stock market, part fantasy sports with a built-in loyalty program. Top Shot has evolved trading cards and made it easier to buy, sell, and trade by removing the hassle of card grading, shoe boxes, and binders. Their 24/7 peer-to-peer marketplace lets you scroll through all of your favorite players and teams. You can find the moment you've been looking for. And I hear all the time, why would I buy something I could watch on YouTube for free? It's not about watching the highlight. It's about ownership of the stock market value of the NBA's greatest moments. And owning a Top Shot moment can get you access to unbuyable once-in-a-lifetime experiences. For example, last year, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to Phoenix for Game 5 of the NBA Finals. Just for owning some Suns moments, you got to check it all out. If you sign up for Top Shot today, the best way to start is getting yourself a starter pack. You can pull a moment of a superstar like LeBron or KD, or a rookie like Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley. Head over to lockedon.nbatopshot.com to start building your collection today. Let's also talk about the good folks over at TrueBill. Because did you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download TrueBill to take control of your subscriptions. It's a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. And on average, people save up to $720 per year with TrueBill because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. TrueBill makes it simple. Link your accounts, and TrueBill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your TrueBill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, so you don't have to. They have over 2 million users. They've helped them save over $100 million in total. So stop falling for subscription scams. Start canceling today. TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Myles Turner is out for the season. It's finally been announced. It's kind of been speculated for a long time. It's unsurprising. Myles Turner has not played since January 14th with this stress reaction in his left foot. Finicky injury, something that can take a long time, something that can take a short time. Usually foot things take a little longer, and big men foot things take even longer. So it's not like surprising, but I thought he would probably return this season when they were a little more competitive. After they made some trades, I thought it might take a little longer. And after they started being terrible after the trade deadline, I thought it might not happen at all. And now it's official. Myles Turner will not play again in the 2021-22 season. We'll do a full season recap episode for many Pacers players, including Myles Turner at some point. But his final average is 12.9 points, 7.1 rebounds, 2.8 blocks per game for Mr. Myles Turner on 33.3% shooting from deep, 51% shooting from the field, very nearly a career high from the field, 66% 2-point percentage, which is best in a while. Doesn't matter what his stats were this season. He's out for the year. He's done. Again, unsurprising because he hasn't played since January 14th. But why now? Why is this announced now? Well, Rick Carlisle explained before the game, he's been working up in practice and has practiced with Halliburton and all these guys. And he probably could have, Rick Carlisle said, maybe gotten in at the last 2 games, but not enough where it's meaningful. And their last 2 games are back-to-back. And what's the point of getting a guy in there at that point, especially with the foot thing? Why push it? What's the point? The Pacers are 25-51. There is no point. And they determined today, in a conversation with Turner and his representation, it was an agreement from all parties. It was not Turner's decision. This was not the Pacers' decision. This was an agreed-upon decision by all parties. Myles Turner's season would end. He can focus on next year now. And Kevin Pritchard even putting out a statement about this. They did this with Warren too, which I think is cool, that, and telling that they're working with the player and telling about what they're thinking about the future with these injuries, and not just it's not as short-sighted as just a tanking thing. It's just about the future. But Kevin Pritchard said, after numerous conversations with our medical team, Myles, and his representatives, became clear that to everyone that despite Myles' continued progress and positive diagnosis, there's not enough time remaining in the season to properly and safely prepare him for the remaining workload associated with an NBA game. We will continue to work closely with Myles, and we're looking forward to his return to the court at full strength next season. So, again, right decision at this time. Obviously, reaction number one, huge bummer to not see him and Halliburton play this season together. Not even just because maybe they will or won't be an awesome fit. Who knows? Who knows? That's a conversation for another day, I think. When Myles is getting closer to a return or is cleared for full basketball activities or whatever. But the bummer part is for a Pacers team that made a ton of changes this season and has said and stated on the record that a lot of the rest of their season is about player evaluation and developing their roster and getting their team winning habits for next season, evaluating how their young guys who are certainly part of their future, like Tyrese Halliburton, fit with some of these vets like Myles Turner and Brogdon and even McConnell. How do they fit together is very important. If they fit terribly together, that those players might not be back. If they fit great, maybe that's a key part of the next iteration of the great Pacers. Who knows? And not getting Halliburton plus Turner, not even just Halliburton. Jalen Smith's been playing alongside other bigs. Maybe Jalen Smith and Turner look decent together. Jalen Smith's been shooting the three ball very well. Maybe Buddy Hield and Myles Turner is a lethal shooting lineup that suddenly works great together. Who knows? There was a lot of change to this Pacers team. That is the worst part of this whole Turner thing to me is, and even if I thought it was only going to be 2 or 3 games, I'm a data guy. I would have loved to see the numbers and seen how these guys fit, what it looks like, what they say about it, how they all feel. And Halliburton's been practicing with Turner, but that's not the same as game reps. And they can work together in the offseason. I'm sure they will. Pacers players had an entire run together out in California this past summer, all together, the full team. And I'm sure that they can set up something like that again. So it's not like Halliburton and Turner are going to be coming in blind and never playing together next year, if Turner's even back. But to not see them together, obviously, is the biggest bummer part of this, is that Turner plus the new core has yet to be evaluated. And Turner being out this long kind of reinforces why they didn't trade him too, right? Like, I thought maybe there was a chance he would be playing not too long after the All-Star break. That was clearly very wrong. That was just given the history of injuries like this. But again, with big men and foot things, they always end up taking a little longer. If the medical suggested he'd be out for 2 months, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world that they didn't trade him at the trade deadline. His value would have been way lower for any receiving team. Like, why would they trade for him? He's not going to play the rest of the season. But if he's recovered and he's practicing and he's ready to go, his value will be there in the offseason. It'll be a little lower than it was during the season, but an injury makes it lower than it was anyway. Why not wait it out and see how the market sort of develops? So that's kind of all the initial thoughts tied up is, it makes sense why he wasn't traded during the season. It's a huge bummer that he won't play with Halliburton. What happens now? What happens going forward? Well, we've already been seeing the Pacers play this season without him, and they've been playing all these young bigs, go guys, A. Jackson, Jalen Smith, and it's been good to see them develop and finally get minutes in Goga's case, or really pop onto the scene in Jalen Smith's case, or show some development in Isaiah Jackson's case, but none of those guys have been amazing. So the fact that Myles Turner has 1 year left on his deal is very interesting now. Obviously, a trade would make some sense just because he's 1 year left, not because I think Myles Turner should be dealt or because he's an awful fit with the score, but any vet with 1 year left on their deal, natural instinct for a franchise is going to be, okay, well, maybe we need to find value for this guy. We don't want to lose him in free agency for nothing. So who knows what Turner's future holds, but that's going to be a natural talking point for a lot of next season is, what does Myles Turner's future look like with this team? But the other flip side of this is, look, Jalen Smith has certainly shown that he can shoot and be a good connecting piece with this Pacers team. And Goga's been playing much better the last couple weeks and looks like a reliable rotation big. And Isaiah Jackson is an awesome defender for his age and size. But none of them have proven to be consistently positive contributors yet in a way that makes you believe that if the Pacers are being serious, that next year, hey, they want to be good. They want to be back in the playoffs. None of those guys have shown they can be that level of contributor. And that makes Myles Turner pretty important for next year's Pacers. If they want reliable center minutes, they have a guy on the team to do it. So maybe they want him to play on that 1 year deal, and he isn't extension eligible the second really the start of the next league year. But the second the season ends, they could talk about it at that point, basically. Maybe they want to extend Myles Turner. And because they could be a cap space team, they could renegotiate and extend Myles Turner, bump up his contract a little bit, add more years to it. I think a long-term extension would be pretty stupid for the Pacers at this point in time. Not because Myles Turner's not worthy of, a 4-year deal or whatever, but because their team is in so much flux that having the flexibility of him on a shorter deal is nice. But if he was willing to take a small pay bump in 1 year to get a second year on his deal, that might up his trade value and allow you to see what you have next year if you really want to be good. If he's not any good, or if he doesn't fit with your new core, he still got some trade value because you extended him by a year. And if he is bad, Or if he's great, then great. You have your center of the future potentially on your team. So that would be what I think the Pacers should look to do. But Myles Turner's intentions matter just as much as the Pacers in this case. He has full autonomy to do whatever he wants as a basketball player, besides that he's under contract. He can't just not play anymore. So we'll see where that gets resolved, but that kind of stuff is the next step for Turner. I'll talk all about all these guys' off seasons in the summer. It's all kind of TBD in the air, but Myles Turner's season's over, and the biggest bummer of all this is we don't get to see him play with the new area. We'll see how this looks, and this will obviously be an evolving conversation as the offseason progresses, as it has always been with Myles Turner. What's his future with the team? It's also didn't get to see the new look Myles Turner without Sabonis. Still, to this day, he has not played since the Turbonis era ended. So we'll have to see what his future holds. Obviously a huge bummer, but not a surprise at all. As someone who loves watching Myles Turner play basketball, that is the biggest bummer of all. To me, let's talk about one more thing. Justin Anderson back for 10 more days with the Pacers. Started again against Atlanta. They are signing a starter on a 10-day contract the same day they sign him. That sums up the Pacers season about as well as anything can. Before we talk about Justin Anderson's 10-day deal, what it means for the Pacers going forward, I got to tell you guys about the good folks over at RockAuto.com. There's so many makes and models of vehicles out there now. It is impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need or the right specs for whatever your vehicle is. There's so many different tiny tweaks between the same types of vehicles, and they never have the part you need in the store, so they got to order it from their warehouse. Then you got to go back and pick it up. Sometimes they ship it to you. Either way, it's a delay. That's stupid. You have a computer with access to rockauto.com either at home or right in your pocket. You can save time and money and just use Rock Auto instead. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for these same parts from a chain store or dealership when you can get them from rockauto.com? A family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are always reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, new carpet, you name it, they got it. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On Now, the latest and greatest from around the NBA, from all the local experts breaking down every single game from the NBA last night, including me on Pacers Hawks, or Locked On NBA, where you can hear David Ramel and Matt Moore talk about all the action around the NBA and the latest news. LeBron's injury, I'm sure, will be discussed at length in there as the Lakers continue to try to hold on to their play-in spot. Justin Anderson, 10 more days with the Pacers, as I surmised on yesterday's podcast, as his 10-day deal expired over the weekend. Justin Anderson has signed for another 10 days with the Pacers. They waited till Monday, the 28th, which I thought was interesting, which means now his 10-day deal will run through April 6th. So no two-way guys get converted this year for the Pacers. If it happens at the end of the year, maybe, but there's less incentive for them to do so now that they can't backfill the spot as meaningfully. We'll see what happens. Either way, Justin Anderson is the story here. 10 more days with the Pacers. Signs earlier in the day, immediately hops right back in to the starting five for the Pacers. Plays against the Hawks, 4 for 9, 9 points, 5 rebounds. They get absolutely smoked in his minutes. Justin Anderson's been very up and down for the Pacers. His first 10 day was fine. He had 2 really solid games and 2 kind of off games, and 1 game where he didn't play much against the Hawks. In this game, he was kind of in the middle. It was his first kind of averages leveling out kind of thing for Justin Anderson. And something that was interesting was, I asked Rick Carlisle about the signing before the game, and he look, Rick Carlisle coached Justin Anderson with Dallas, and I read a piece from Tim McMahon and ESPN about this. Like, Justin Anderson was good enough as a rookie, or was reliable enough as a rookie, that Rick Carlisle does something he very rarely did in the past, and that is play a rookie in the playoffs, like decent minutes. Justin Anderson played for them in their first-round series against OKC that year, and then next year he was no longer on the team. He got traded to Philly, but he earned the trust of Carlisle then, and Carlisle lauded his G League performances now as a part of the reason he was signed with the Pacers. And Justin Anderson was excellent for the Mad Ants this year. But something else Carlisle said that stood out is, this is the biggest reason I think Justin Anderson was signed. They need bodies on the team to play, right? Earlier today, and today is Monday, so for you listening, earlier yesterday, Goga Batadze was questionable to play against the Hawks. He ends up playing, but the Pacers weren't sure if he was going to play. They knew Dwayne Washington, who was questionable, would not, but they weren't sure about Goga. And if Goga didn't play, the Pacers would have only had 7 available guys for the game. You need 8 to play a game. So they needed someone, literally a fresh body on the team, to be healthy to get 8 on the team. And that was Carlisle admitted it. That was kind of a motivation of getting Justin Anderson, and is having a legal team to field. And then Goga ends up playing, so they have 9. But thankfully, they brought in Justin Anderson because O'Shea Brissett comes down with back pain right before the game. He's a sore back. Boom, he can't play. They need Justin Anderson to field 8 guys. So some of the motivation for his signing was, hey, you need 8 guys to play a game. And look, that sounds like an insult, but it's not. They thought he was the best guy to be that guy, that 8th guy, to fill their team for the 10 days while they have all these injuries. And I think the biggest part of this still to me is a wing. Not that they need a wing necessarily, but that he is a wing is important because, one, you can never have too many wings in the NBA. We just saw the Pacers play the Raptors this past weekend, and when the Raptors just say, okay, let's have as many 6'8" guys as we can. They can play whatever position they want. They're all long. They can all dribble. They can all play defense. We'll win a lot just from that, and that's worked for them. And Justin Anderson isn't quite as long as those guys, but he's kind of the same size, and he's stocky, and he's got some utility on defense because of all that. He can switch a bunch. That kind of player archetype is extremely valuable. So just seeing how one can fit, especially the best one in the G League, at least offensively, seeing how that can fit on your team, like I said on yesterday's podcast, has a lot of value. So I am all for the Pacers doing it that way. I think that makes a lot of sense from my chair as someone who is fascinated by team building and these little stratagems of how to get the most value on your team for what the resources you have. So getting a wing in that way makes sense. On a step further, too, right? We talked about this in the Turner segment a little bit. This is all about evaluation and not seeing Turner plus Halliburton or Hield or whoever. It's painful for evaluation, but seeing how Halliburton plays with a wing who can do the things that Justin Anderson can do is a data point. Even if you don't have Justin Anderson specifically on next year's Pacers, seeing maybe they get a wing in the draft, or maybe they get another veteran wing on their team next year. Seeing how Halliburton and that and Anderson play off each other could be kind of a way for the Pacers to say, okay, that kind of is how that he'll whatever wing they have next year fits on the team. That is valuable information to have, and the most key position, or one of the most key positions in the NBA these days, getting a guy in who can do that is important. So Justin Anderson, they needed a fresh body, and he plays an important wing position. That's perfect. He's also been okay for them. The 2 good games, well over 10 points, 18 against Portland in that big win, 18 in Toronto in a big loss. He's shown that he can be a solid scorer like he was in the G League. He also had some off nights, 2 for 10 against Sacramento, 3 for 10 against Memphis, but he was good, in 2 games, and he was all right against the Hawks. 4 for 9 for 9 points is acceptable, I suppose, especially all on jump shots. He's not really taking it to the rim that much. His cutting's been okay. I think most of his utility, like I've said, is on defense. He can guard 2 through 5, really 3 through 5. I'll say he can guard some 2s. And that's where the Pacers get the most out of him, is they've been switching way more since the trade deadline defensively. Now, you can question their defensive scheme. They've been horrible on defense for the better part of a month now, giving up 130 points in 3 straight games. But what they're doing, Justin Anderson does fit that. It doesn't cause all these other guys headache and stress playing with him because he can't execute their scheme, or he's not good enough to do what the Pacers need him to do. The fact that he can switch and play D is valuable too. So I think given his familiarity with his team, he's had 2 10 days with them before this one. One was that hardship one back in January. Now this one last week. The fact that he is a wing, the fact that he was really solid in the G League, yeah, he makes sense as a 10-day guy even outside of his organizational familiarity. So the fact that they needed a healthy body to field 8, and the fact that he checks a lot of key boxes for the Pacers, yeah, makes all the sense in the world that they signed Justin Anderson for 10 more days. It's a fine move from the Pacers. With Turner out for the season, he wasn't going to be all defense anyway, but now that he's out for the season, he probably doesn't even play enough games to even be on like any league leaderboard list. Myles Turner's not making an all defense team. And that's important because that means he's not going to get a bonus for being on an all defense team, which means the Pacers are home free from the luxury tax. They're not going to clear it. Nothing bad can happen for them to be over it. So there's really no cap impact for signing Justin Anderson for 10 days. They could sign someone else after him, or after this 10-day expires. They could even give someone a pay bump if they wanted, after like a 2-way guy, I guess, not like a guy under contract. But they have the flexibility now to do stuff. They're not going to be paying the luxury tax they got under. They'll get the big revenue share dip. So they're able to do anything regardless of what they would have done with Justin Anderson, but they can fit him in easily. There's very little cap impact. So good move from the Pacers, I think. Maybe evaluating someone else would have had just as much value. Just keep getting the bodies in the door. Perhaps that's what they do. But the thing is, his deal expires now on April 6th. And after April 6th, they have 2 practices and then a back-to-back, and then their season's over. So yeah, maybe you can bring someone in for that final back-to-back, but who knows what kind of evaluation they'll be thinking at that point. Like maybe TJ McConnell's back at that point. They still haven't ruled him out for the season, and he wants to play, Rick Carlisle said. So we'll see what the Pacers are thinking at that stage in time. We'll see what Justin Anderson's final week or so what this team looks like, but he could be a guy that gets evaluated. Maybe he does have a future with this team. Maybe he pops really well and wants to be with this team longer term. Maybe he stinks and the Pacers say, okay, at least we evaluated a guy for 20 days. Who knows? But the next 10 days will answer all those questions. Thank you all for listening today. Hope you had a great day and enjoyed Pacers Hawks. Despite the Pacers' putrid defense, it was quite a fun game to be at and watch. We'll be back tomorrow talking about the Pacers season in general ahead of their game on Wednesday at home with, we'll see. I don't want to reveal the guests yet, also because at this stage in the season, it's kind of hard to book people at specific times. I also have a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. So we'll see who the guest is tomorrow. We're talking about the Pacers' crappy defense, at this point in their season, what they should focus on for the final 12 days, all that sort of good stuff as their season sort of winds down with 6 games to go. Hope you all had a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.